Hello friends. So today we are going to learn about false imprisonment under the tort law. So what is false imprisonment? So it is basically the imposition of total restraint for however short period upon the liberty of any person without the sufficient law justification. So the essential of false imprisonment is first that there is a total restraint on the liberty of a person, and then second that such restraint is without any lawful justification. So now if we consider that what is total restraint. So if you refer to the criminal law under section 340, there is a provision for wrongful confinement where it talks about the total restraint, and then section 339 talks about the partial restraint, which is known as wrongful restraint. So, under the law of tort, the partial restraint is not applicable. The tort of false imprisonment comes into being when there is a total restraint. Thus, if a man is prevented from going in a particular direction, there is no any false imprisonment. Now let's learn about the case law. So here the first case law is Bird versus Jones. So what happened in this case was that there was a public footway which was wrongfully closed by the defendants, and they were only allowing those person who made the payment to use that footway. So this footway, it was a place from where you can see the rowing. So the plaintiff was prevented to go as he didn't make any payment. So he remained there for about an hour and a half. So subsequently, he brought an action for false imprisonment against the defendants. So, since the plaintiff was at liberty to go back there and there was no case of false imprisonment, the restraint here was imposed with respect to a particular direction only. There was no any total restraint. So, it was held that the false imprisonment was not there. Now let's talk about the use of physical force. That use of physical force is not necessary when we are talking about the false imprisonment. Even a threat of use of force to keep a person within the circumcised limit is enough. Now again in the second case law in Pyare Lal versus Om Prakash, here the plaintiff, he was a advocate. So he was arrested and detained by the two police officers of a police station as a proclaimed offender and absconder. So here the court said, when this matter came into the court said that the tort of false imprisonment is defined that every restraint on the liberty of person will be held to be false imprisonment if there is no any lawful justification. Now what is the means of escape in cases of false imprisonment? So if there is any means of escape, the restraint cannot be termed as total, and that does not constitute false imprisonment. For example, like if you are confined at a place where there is a window that is so high that the likelihood of you escaping from there is very minimal, then such means of escape are of no significance. And now let's come to talk about the knowledge of the plaintiff about his false imprisonment. So there was a case law, Airing versus Boyle. It was held in that case law that the no knowledge will amount to no false imprisonment. Here in this case, what happened that a schoolmaster wrongfully refused to permit a schoolboy to go with his mother unless his mother cleared his dues. So the boy did not have any knowledge of such conversation between her mother and the headmaster. So it was held that the boy did not have any knowledge regarding the refusal and the restraint. So the same could not be amount to false imprisonment. But in another case, it was held in Maring versus Graham that the knowledge of imprisonment is not necessary or the essential element to bring the claim for false imprisonment, because the wrong could not be said to be committed only when a person is having the knowledge of the same. Like if a person is wrongfully restrained while he is asleep, drunk, insane, that is to say that his freedom to move might be restrained, even without him being aware of the situation. Now let's talk about the defenses. So any reasonable condition which is imposed by the occupiers of the premises on the person who enter their premises is justifiable. So in the case of Heard versus Weddell, a person, he entered into a contract with a mine owner to work for the specified hours in a particular mine, and he refused to do so even after having gone down the mine for work. So he wanted to be brought to the surface in the lift before the expiry of the period of work which was fixed by the defendant. So the defendant, he refused to let down the lift to take him up. So the plaintiff minor, he was not allowed to leave the pit for 20 minutes. Here, when he brought the suit against the defendants were held not liable for the false imprisonment because there were certain reasonable condition which was imposed by the mine owner to the mine worker. So now let's also talk about the remedies which are there for the false imprisonment. So there are basically three remedies for false imprisonment. First one is a self-help. So self-help is remedy which is available when a person is under detention. Like he has the right to use the reasonable force to free himself and not to wait for a judicial process which will secure his release. Then second one is habeas corpus. This is one of the writs, as you may know, that such a writ may be issued by the Supreme Court or the High Court under Article 32 and Article 226 respectively. So as per this writ, the detaining person is required to produce the detained person before the court and justify the detention. So this writ is considered to be the golden remedy which is provided by the English law for the release of a person who is unlawfully detained. Anyone may apply for the writ of habeas corpus, commanding the person to whom it is addressed to have the body of the person specified to be taken in front of the authority. So the decision will either that the prisoner will be released, or if the detention is lawful, then he will be speedily brought to the trial. Then the third remedy is action for damages. The plaintiff can bring an action for damages whenever he has been wrongfully detained. The compensation can be claimed for the injury to liberty, disgrace, or humiliation. Now, what are the damages? When there is a false imprisonment, which means restraint on liberty, it implies the loss of reputation. So, no amount of damage can really undo the mischief, but the only way which is open to the court is to uphold the right of the plaintiff and express the disapproval of such conduct against the defendant. So here the court rewards monetary compensation by the way of damages, and such damages cannot be just nominal, it must be substantial. Like the damages can be mitigated if the defendants, they express their repentance and they apologize for the wrong which is done by them at the earliest possible opportunity. And there is also a very important Indian judgment regarding this. This was Rudal Shah versus State of Bihar. In this, a plaintiff was released after 14 years of acquittal, and the detention was without any lawful justification. So an action was brought against the state for this, and he was paid the compensation for this.